Thanks for staying with us. Okay, so the Punch reports that the strike declared by the Academic Staff Union of University entered its 140th day today, while the strike declared by the Joint Action Committee of Senior Staff Association of Nigeria University and the Non-Academic Staff Union of Education and other allied institutions, which began on the 25th of March 2022, also entered its 68th day today, while the National Executive Council of Academic Staff Union of Polytechnics is currently meeting in Jigawa State, as Mani had read earlier. After calling off a 2-week strike, they are also embarking on a 2-month strike, right? So in a statement made by the made to journalists, right, by SERAP Deputies Director Kolawole Oluwadare, noted that the government's failure to meet ASUU's demand implements the agreement it had with the union and satisfactorily resolve the issue has kept poor Nigerian children at home, while the children of the country's politicians attend private schools, or some of them actually even go abroad to study. So what are some of the impacts you think that the unending ASUU strike is having on our educational system? Now, please, let's hear what you have to say. Remember, you can join the conversation. Send us an SMS or WhatsApp to 081-803-4663. As I'd mentioned earlier, right, the impact I feel that this has had is that nobody is even believing in the system anymore. No, it's a lot of Nigerians are losing patriotism. Nobody wants to stay back. Everybody's just looking for the next thing, and that's why some students that were even caught up in the Ukraine-Russian war preferred to stay back, even when they said, okay, there were opportunities for them to be evacuated, right? They preferred to stay back. But let me just quickly bring in our guests, because I think we've extended this a lot. Dr. Auten Sado is a senior lecturer, media studies at the University of Harcourt, and a public relations consultant, and he's always available, you know, to lend his voice, especially when it comes to issues around, you know, education, right? And thank you so much. He's joined us live from Port Harcourt. Thank you so much, Dr. Auten.
My pleasure to be with you.
I'm so happy. First of all, thank you first for at short notice that you were, you know, you're the first person I will call that will not even, you just says, okay, no problem, what time is it? But thank you so much for making our time available for us to have this conversation. All right, so this ASUU conversation is something that is really tiring, because it has almost gotten to the point where it's become like a joke. Nobody even understands, nobody even talks about it anymore. Everybody has just swept it under the carpet, right? And we're wondering, is this, you know, is this how we're going to be quiet, all of us as Nigerians, and just watch it continue? Because 140 days out of school, that is no joke, but it's like it's a normal thing right now in Nigeria. But you tell us, how is this really impacting the educational structure right now, the unending ASUU strike?
But I think as a people, we have actually gone numb on most of the sensitive things that we should be active about in this country.
Yeah.
That's why you will have guide action by like us to, and you are counting 140 days. There seems to be a state of inertia in the system, both on the part of the government, the public, including parents and students. So I think that's where we are. We have lost a sense of what it takes to own up our responsibility and stand up to the institutions of government by asking public officers to be accountable and live up to their responsibilities. And having said that, I think that it's even a wrong narration to see that this is about us. I think that if we understand this to be more about us as a people or as a nation, then we will be on our way to making, coming out of it. Imagine that we have this that is all about us. What about parents? What about the students? What about the other organizations and stakeholders involved in education in the country, including the Ministry of Education, the NUC, and all other stakeholders? So it tells a story that we as a nation, we are actually not interested in development. Now, you talked about the impact in the university system. I'll just restrain myself to what happens within the university, because if we're to expand it to include what happens, with the children along the education delivery, then we'll be talking about something quite colossal. If you know that many businesses thrive when the school system is on. So if for 140 days uh, the academic staff union and other staff union in the universities have been on strike, you will also imagine that those businesses that depend on these institutions for survival, that for that long also they will be dead. Almost nothing happening in the university system. But on the positive side, if we had an alternative to having a strike, then the ASUU members will not go on strike, because over time it has been proven that until they actually confront this issue by embarking on strike, the government does not respond. And so if government will not respond, and ASUU also decides that, well, we were not going to get involved in this struggle, then we might as well have said goodbye to what is called public tertiary education in this country. So,
Yeah.
to answer the question about impact, I think it's given us a lot of positive results, because if you go to the schools, particularly the universities, you see that the little that is going on in terms of capital development is coming as a result of ASUU engagement with government, which has led to TED Fund and the needs assessment, which is the only means of now having physical structures put in the universities. Without it, we will have said goodbye to the tertiary education, particularly the university system, the public university, as is evident in the secondary and primary school, where I do not think that any Nigerian, at least, assuming we have the middle class, we used to have that, but because of what's happening to us, almost everybody, including the children of the artisans, all send their children to private schools, private secondary school, and private primary school. That's because um, a form of appeasance to the neglect by stakeholders in that system has resulted in completely obliterating what that system stood for. So I think we're having a good result. We're having what we have now because of the engagement of ASUU
Okay.
in, with the federal government and other stakeholders in the funding of
Doc-
education in Kenya.
All right, doctor, you know what? Because this is actually interesting, right? But is this not a complete waste of time? Because right now, in my head, right, the only educational institution that still has a bit of government, government presence is the universities. Because secondary schools, like you rightly mentioned, secondary schools, elementary schools, most of those schools, there's little or no government, schools anymore, participation in those arms. And we have seen tremendous success. Can we not just find a way to get ourselves out of government government involvement with our universities? Is it possible that we start to look, for other means? Because it seems like ASUU says we are standing on this, government says we are standing on this. They say when the elephant is fighting, it is two elephants are fighting. It is the grass. In this point, is the students that are suffering, their parents are suffering. Because I cannot even imagine I put a child to go to a 4-year course, and the child is in school 8 years, 10 years, all in the name of strike. It even is demoralizing. So can we not find a way to get government's hand out of the tertiary educational structure in Nigeria? Is it even possible?
I feel as we're speaking, you just see that I was laughing because the story you're telling is emblematic of what we as a people, including the government, what we think education should be in this country. And there is something that is not coming out right from your narration. You think that there's success in the primary and secondary school. Yet, you also claim that the standard of education is going down. So, if there is success in primary school and secondary school because of private-driven sector, Why is the standard of education going down? Because as anybody will tell you, when you go to the tertiary university, you're going there to specialize in delivery in some aspect of our national life. What you do in the primary school and in the secondary school is to open up yourself and prepare yourself for that learning. So if we have quality delivery in those primary schools, why is it that by the time they get into the university, you're struggling with making people to even read and write? Literacy is not what you do in the university. By the time you are in primary 3, primary 4, primary 5, you have attained the highest level of literacy. And so, when you get into the secondary school, you're beginning to advance your professionalization in certain areas where you could perform in the system. So it's clear that government neglect of education has led to what people now say that we have poor standard of education, because there is nothing existing at that level. And let me tell you, if you have tried, like we do, to look at the quality of delivery at that level, you see that because of the commercialization of education at that level, you see non-qualified people teaching. In fact, I was discussing with someone 2 days ago. I saw it. I saw someone who was hurrying to school to teach on Friday morning, and I asked, "Is this person a teacher?" And they say, "I say, what is he going to teach?" Somebody who just barely had a handle on anything reasonable in secondary school is already a teacher. And so by the time they get to the university, they've wasted their time. Maybe the success you are talking about is the amount of money that goes to the hands of the proprietors of those schools. And there is no way you can quantify education as a social with the amount of money that people are paying, or the amount of dividend that owners of those universities are making out of those systems. We are talking about national development. And if you want to develop a nation, and you think that you should commercialize education to the point that the people who are poorly paid in this nation will not be able to send their children to school, you're only you're preparing the nation for destruction. And as a matter of fact, there is a relationship between what is happening in Nigeria, in the state of insecurity in Nigeria, and the funding of education. Because so many people are out of the net. And because of that, people are taking laws into their hands. People do not even understand what it means to be human anymore, because the level of education that people are exposed to is, of course, standing in a service delivery in this country. So it's better for the nation that we fund education, and through that, reduce dependence in some other areas that these youths are exposing themselves to, and also reduce the state of insecurity in this country. There is no alternative to funding education, because any organization, any country that outspends you or outfunds you in education will outsmart you also in development. Education is a direct link to development. So if you want to develop, you must spend in education. It's an investment that will take time to yield dividend. But if you neglect it, in a very short time, just like we are seeing in this country, you see the danger that neglect will bring to the nation.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay, Doctor, thank you for what you just said. It's very important to note that education is connected to nation building, and what kind of nation are you going to be building without education? So but there are a lot of things that people are saying out there. People are talking about how the government is underfunding the tertiary institutions, but there's another school of thought that says that the universities are mismanaging the funds that are already given to them. So what do you have to say about this?
When people talk about mismanaging, they do not understand that before now, universities used to have a budget system. It's no longer that way. So today, what government does is pay salary. Apart from those two institutions I mentioned earlier, one institution, Fed Fund, and of course the other arrangement that we have with government as a result of ASUU strike, which is the needs assessment, there is no development in the universities. In 1980, 1985, where you could get a university and the total population of that university is probably 4,000. That same university will be housing over 40,000 students today, and there is no improvement on the infrastructure, no improvement in the classroom, no improvement in the course of residence, no improvement in municipal services. So government is not funding education enough. And those who claim that universities are mismanaged, I will not hold brief for managers of the university. But because I am in the system, I also know the lack that is in the system. When people claim that government is actually funding education completely, that's not true. Parents are paying for services in the universities. They pay for halls, they pay for charges that will make sure that you provide electricity. Of course, you know electricity is a big problem in this country. And if you have to run electricity in any university, you're going to use diesel and generator. That will cost money. Government does not provide money for that. So the little charges that they get from students, they put it into municipal services. I am not saying that it's unlikely that there is fraud in the system, but government has not done enough to now determine how much influence they can exert to demand that determine how much that is going out of the system through corruption or fraud. If you are not giving money, what are you asking people to account for? People will account for what they are getting from those other sources. That is expected. But even that is not enough. What is the cost of training? What is the cost of training a student in this country for one year? What is the cost that government is putting into those universities? And that's why you get to places, when you get to the libraries, you don't get sufficient and updated volumes in our libraries. Students are depending on what they do with their private data to money data to go on internet. A university should have such a well-endowed environment with internet. When you get into a university anywhere else in the world, you do not talk about data. In Nigeria, students are still struggling with data. Lecturers are still struggling with data. So what funding are they giving? And when you do that, in fact, there are some places you get to on the corridors of the offices, you see many lecturers having private generators running because they want to keep the system running. That should never be encouraged.
Oh, wow.
And so if you want accountability, government and the vice chancellor should give account give account of what they have. But it does not excuse government from the neglect that they have foisted on the system by underfunding the universities.
Okay, absolutely. I would like to take a break, but first I want to understand how this how universities are run abroad. But we'll take a very short break. When we come back from the break, we'll continue the conversation. Stay with us. All right, if you just tuned in, we are having a conversation around the impact of the unending ASUU strike on our educational system, right? And we have with us Dr. Auten Sado. Please, let's hear what you have to say. Remember, you can join the conversation. Send us an SMS or WhatsApp to 081-803-84663. Today is only WhatsApp or SMS because somebody has been trying to reach us on the, calling on the WhatsApp line. We can't take calls today. So just please send your messages. Dr. Auten, I was saying that how are universities, how is the system run abroad? Because if you go anywhere in the world, education is not cheap, right? Comparing the kind of amount of money we pay as school fees, especially with our government schools, right? I'm just wondering, how do they do it abroad that people are able to go even on scholarships, tuition free, some people full-blown scholarships and all of that? There has to be somewhere where that fund is coming from that is not really from the government, because I've heard of different charity organizations, different bodies, individuals, right, building departments, funding an entire department in a school, funding research for universities and all of that. Can we not start to explore those options as opposed just trying to just depend only on the government all the time? Because everywhere in the world, right, education is not cheap. Some people have made it a personal thing to say, you know what, I must make sure that we have quality students and quality education, and they pump in a lot of funds. Private individuals, private companies. Can we start to focus our energy on that? given that we know the challenges the Nigerian government already has. Let's just find a way to just move ourselves away from it. I'm just trying to find a solution.
You know, if I ask you how much students pay in Finland to go to school, I'm not sure you tell me how much. If I ask you how much German students pay to go to the university, I'm not sure you understand that. And if
I know
tell
in
you
Germany, free tuition. That's how far
Sorry?
I know. I said some.
Come again?
Germany and I think Finland, they have free tuition, free.
Oh, thank God. That's exactly the point I was trying to achieve. So if they have free tuition, how are we talking about students paying here? Now, the truth is, in a normal environment, people who make money in business actually do endowment in the universities. And so you make an endowment, and somehow in some universities they grow their endowment fund into billions and raise money to fund education. In Nigeria, people in public office underfund the public institution so they can buy it with government money. So you see the difference. Someone who is too pretending over institution overseas will make effort to attract funds to those institutions. In Nigeria, they will make effort to make sure that they destroy it, because without they are destroying those ones, the private ones they are setting up will not work. And I don't have to mention names here, but I'm sure you know that our leaders, those we have entrusted our public offices to, have established universities that are running even as we speak. Leaders of this nation at a very high level in this country establish universities, and they undermine the public utilities public universities to make sure that the private universities run. So when you talk about how they fund it elsewhere, in places like United States or even Britain, some of those places, students have access to loan. But in this country, in Nigeria, you're asking yourself, who is going to give that loan? We started scholarship board before, we started education bank before. It never worked because it's not sustainable. The easiest way for government to keep developing is to fund education, because by doing that, you spread the cost. Little cost you put into the system will cover a large number of people, and it's cheaper. If you were to go by giving loan to students, if you give 1 million naira loan to a student for 1 year, you will find out that if you aggregate 1 million naira out of 20,000 students, what government will spend will be less than what you will give to 20,000 students if you were to give them 1 million naira per student. But the effect, the multiplier effect of what you get in terms of development will be a lot higher. Now, Nigerians, you expect them to commercialize education. How much is our minimum wage? A professor, for example, who overseas is one of the highest paid worker in the system, gets less than $700 in Nigeria a month. And the minimum wage, how much is it? 30,000 naira. Many states are not paying it. And if you want to make school fees 1 million naira or 1.5 million naira, you are only trying to keep people away from the corridor. And when you do that, you are training an army that is ready to destroy.
But Dr. Austin, this funding about the educational salaries for university lecturers, right? I just want to add that even with the private schools, I have heard very funny stories about how even with the exorbitant fees that people pay for school fees in terms of education, private universities don't really pay their lecturers, so well, I mean, it's just that the salaries are not being owed and it's consistent. Yeah. But in terms of so is that not a problem of not just, is that not a problem of not placing value where it should be? Because you see, it is a Nigerian mindset, right? Where we're supposed to attach value, the things that we're supposed to place a premium on, we do not place a premium on it. It is just that particular salary issue is not a federal government thing. It is just everywhere, where you just want to underpay people, because you feel that they're not, and overwork them, and you feel like they're not deserving. That is a Nigerian problem. It's not really focused on so much on ASUU. Do you agree with me?
No, I don't agree with
Okay.
you. The reason I don't agree with you is that you contradicted yourself when you said that students are paid so much in private schools, yet the lecturers are not well paid. Should it be so? So you now see that it is not lack of fund that is leading to
Yeah.
underpayment of lecturers.
It's,
So they
yeah, that's
have
what you said.
But
that
that's what I
much.
said.
Exactly. So are you now arguing that public universities, because private universities are not paying lecturers well, that public universities should also go that way? Is that what you're arguing?
No.
Of
So
course,
that's
it's
not
going
my
to be a
argument.
argument.
So that's not my
Fine.
argument.
So
Go ahead. Go ahead.
fine. So if that's not your argument, we should actually be talking about that even these people who claim to have private universities, that they are not doing enough, that what they are simply doing is setting up business centers. I mean, without undermining what they are doing, we have close to 200 or so, please, I think about 160 or more private universities in this country. And they have less than 5% of student population. So you clearly see that what is happening is that some individuals who have the means will just set up an organization and set up high school fees, money, underpay people. Are we asking that people should be underpaid so that students will remain in school?
No, so that's
And
my
you see what
point.
is happening.
So my
Fine,
point.
you see what is happening. A university, a private university that has maybe is graduating student is graduating about 100 or 150 students in a year. They have about 100 first class. Is that so? You clearly see that these business centers are contesting
let
the
me
money
explain what
that is in this that is parents have to just keep themselves afloat. Is that what is going to lead to development when you have universities contesting for who will produce the highest number of first class? What has those first class translated in our national development? So it is better for us to think about how to have an inclusive system, inclusive mechanism of funding, so that we open up the corridor, give access to Nigerians who have the capacity to go to school, who are willing to go to school, so we can think about how to get out of the mess we have found ourselves in. To claim that private universities are doing well is actually a disservice to what is happening in Nigeria, because majority of what we still have in Nigeria as graduating students come from the public universities. And there is nothing to show that those students who are having private universities are doing better than those who are in the public universities. So what you have to sustain an argument that clearly shows that the
No,
private universities,
doctor.
even though they are in session, they are not doing anything different to better the law. Rather, students from public universities are even ahead.
Yeah, doctor, thank you so much. What Uwa was trying to say is that in our country, there's actually a misplacement of value. So even the private universities that have the students paying, large amounts of money as school fees, they still pay their lecturers very little amount of money. So that's what she's saying. So it's a misplacement of value. So it's not even about the government anymore. It's something that we see everywhere. Even the private universities also practice this.
And I wanted to follow up on that to say that what we should be clamoring for as a people, right, is not just within the federal universities when it comes to lecturers. Because there was a time in this same country that lecturers rejected oil jobs. They rejected working for companies, blue chip companies and all of that, because as a lecturer, they had more dignity, they had better pay than even people that were working in oil and gas companies. Something happened and there was an upturn. And a lot of, do you understand, that respect, that regard that the lecturer had, good pay, quality job, a clean house, clean car and all of that, all those things went away. So I'm saying that it's still everywhere. Even in the private schools, in the government schools, it's the same thing. The salaries of people that educate us is not, is shameful, I'll call it, right? It's a pity when you hear how much they pay,
with what they do.
Salaries of both lecturers, teachers and all of that. It is actually shameful. Only very few schools are able to pay their teachers good salary. So my point is, shouldn't the fight be larger than just even the federal government when it comes to salary structures for our educators? That was the point I was trying to make.
Fine. Now let me tell you that the proprietors of those private universities do not want their members to unionize.
Yeah.
And
I
if
was
they
going to
don't
say
want their
that.
members to unionize, then it means that we use them as slaves. While we are asking for improvement in the system, those people are not strong enough to stand up to their proprietors, so they
Yeah.
use them as slaves.
And
But
they'll
you
sack them.
talked about people leaving the oil industry to go to the university. I think I need to make a point here that anybody who wants to be a lecturer should not actually be thinking about how much money you're going to make. You should actually be thinking more of the service
Passion.
you're going to give. And I give an example with myself. I started lecturing in 2000, in February 2000. By October 2000, I was invited to work in an oil company. And I said no. I rejected the offer because I want to be a teacher. I want to impart my system. What I'm looking forward to is not how much money that I'm going to be throwing around, but I'm looking at what am I going to contribute in raising another generation of Nigerians who will stand at the gap to make sure that we pass the baton of development going on along the roads. So when you have people who are making this kind of sacrifice, the least you want to do is to distract them. And that's what Nigerians and the government are doing. You distract lecturers by blaming them for going on strike when government fails to keep its own bargain. When you sign an agreement with government to do something and they refuse to do it, in order not to destroy the system, you have to hold this government accountable. So, and that was why in my opening statement, I said that both parents, students, and the Nigerian populace at large are all guilty together with government, because we keep quiet and make it look as if it's a ASUU struggle. It shouldn't be ASUU struggle, it's a national struggle. And if it's a national struggle, every one of us must be involved in that struggle.
Absolutely.
To hold proprietors, as you said, in private universities and government in public universities accountable to do what is necessary. And by the way, if you look through the university system, even the private universities you are talking about, do you have a foreigner lecturing in those universities with those kind of salary they are paying? Of course, the answer is no. But up to the 1980s, 1985 in this country, and that's even up to 1990, you still have at least, you have people from developing countries. If you do not have people from the developed world, a lot of foreigners were teaching in this country, and students also from foreign countries were coming to Nigeria. Look at what is happening today. We have localized our universities. Vice chancellors have to come from the coast state. All the students have to come from the state. We do no longer have what we should actually call a university in this country. And so it is all about funding. Education is expensive, but if you want to see how cheap education is, put your money outside education and you see how difficult. Of course, we are paying the price now. You see the amount of money we are putting into buying arms and doing security, yet we can't sleep with our two eyes open.
Closed.
It is because we have neglected what we should have done in education. That's why we are all
feeling the brunt. Okay, let me take some comments.
We can't sleep at night. We can't even travel by the day.
I was a student in 2000, and I think I had an exchange lecturer from the UK to come teach us, at that point. Well, I don't even know.
In those days.
But let me take a comment, then I'll come to you, Manny. Someone in a federal ministry in charge of a nuclear agency gets about 400,000 naira or more as monthly salary. Same cadre in the university gets 160,000 naira. Are we using nuclear in Nigeria? Clearly, this government wants to ruin the Western education in Nigeria, period. Yeah, Manny, you have some comments, then you have...
The Nigerian government needs to be sincere with the issues of funding institutions in Nigeria. Make the economy attractive for investors. They need to solve issues of double taxations, erratic power supplies, and policies to make Nigeria a good investment destination. Then I have another one. It says, good evening, my dear beautiful sisters of What Are You Saying? # where is the impact of the unending ASUU strike on education? It is so sad and painful that the Nigerian government up till now cannot take education system seriously. They say that the idle mind is the devil's workshop. If the people in government have children schooling in Nigeria, they will not treat the education system like this. Very true. No matter the amount ASUU are asking for, the government can afford it. True. So that this strike can come to an end. Nigeria is not that broke. as not to invest in education. Please let them state their priorities, set their priorities right. If at all there will be a strike, let the students keep themselves busy with part-time jobs and make themselves useful. My name is Daniel Ilo, Ways Regular Fund. Thank you so much, Daniel. You know, I wanted to ask a question. I know that we're talking about the government and how the government is not giving into what these lecturers are asking for. But I don't know if the doctor is still here. Okay. Now that we know that they are planning on going on different protests, 3 days protests, different plans, what if, or in the event that the government continues to turn a deaf ear and blind eye to these people, what happens to the children who are still at home? Number one, we see that universities are churning out half-baked students, and it also affects the lecturers. We don't talk about the lecturers. There's no continuous development as they are home.
Trainings and retrainings.
Yes. So what do you think we can do if we continue to suffer what this government is throwing at us? What can we do to help the lecturers and help the students?
Yeah,
what's the solution?
What we can do as a people is to hold our government accountable. Nigerians are afraid of government. The president, the governors, and the legislators, these people applied to serve us. So we should hold them accountable. We shouldn't be afraid of holding them accountable. This nation is well able to care for these youths, particularly sending them to school. If the least Nigerian government will do for our youth is to ensure that they remain in school, they should do that. And when you hear the amount of money that public officers are paid, and the renting of cars and the extravagant lifestyle that they live, nobody will believe that you do not have money to fund education. So it's a matter of priority, and you said that rightly earlier on. So if we set our priority right, we will be able to do that.
Yeah, so but in the event that they don't still listen.
Dr. Austin, she is saying that if government decides to say this thing, no, we continue this fight, I'm still not going to listen to you. So what do we do?
They cannot. They are our servants. They cannot.
But they have been.
But they've been doing it for this long. They've been doing it for this long.
Before, no, they've successfully done it because we've been docile. We do not know our rights. You just think that, in fact, lecturers are vilified. When we go on strike, they make all manner of jest about lecturers, as if lecturers are the problem. Lecturers are actually fighting on the part of the public to make sure you have something, a system where you can send your children. And many of us who are lecturers also have our children in the universities. My children are at home. I can't afford to pay for private tuition for my children. They're at home. And I'm waiting for the strike to be over so they go back to school. And you see that we are actually facing double jeopardy. As a parent, I'm suffering, and I have a child who is also suffering because I'm passing through this suffering put on us by.
How do you suggest we hold them accountable? How do you suggest we hold them accountable? How do you suggest that we hold the government accountable?
Civil disobedience. We can decide that we're not going to work. Nigerians can decide that until government does something to ASUU, where nobody is going to go anywhere. We won't work. People in the National Assembly who are providing ancillary services, bankers, and everybody says, look, on Monday next week, we are not doing any service in this country because our universities are short.
like that.
You don't step out of your house. You're not going to demonstrate. But when you do that, it will send the right signal to government that these people mean business. So if they fail to do it, and you don't go to work 1 week, the government will sit up. There is money to fund education. But if we think that we're not concerned, the bankers can feel that's not their problem. The other people who work in the oil industry, who are the marketers,
so they need to come together. Yeah, we need to come together.
Force government to do it. Stop selling. Close your market and go home. And say, government, you know what? Until you listen to what is happening to the universities,
we're not doing anything. I agree.
It's a fantastic suggestion. I don't know if Nigerians were united enough to understand the pain and to understand what you're saying about the the impact of this strike on us as a people, on our nation. But thank you so much. We are going to keep bringing you back. We'll keep having this conversation. At least for us, our part is to keep the conversations at the front burner. Keep talking about it. Thank you for always making yourself available to us. I will continue this conversation. Thank you so much, Manny.
Thank you, Doctor.
All right, so before we go,
Thank you.
it says the ASUU strike, let me quickly take this comment. It says the ASUU strike have made many students to lose interest in education. If these continue, it will lead to poor academic achievement that will provide half-baked graduates. I plead on the government to please give them the requirements they asked for. This is Oyin from Ondo State. Thank you so much, Oyin. It's a sad situation, but you know what? We will keep talking about it because we don't have a choice. Now, before we go, do ensure you follow us on Instagram at PlusTvAfrica. You can interact with us further, drop a comment, and more importantly, follow all our engagements on social media, like, share, invite all your families and friends to watch and follow the conversation. Now, if you missed today's quote, here it is again. The purpose of education is to replace an empty mind with an open one. This is very powerful. It means we have a lot of empty minds, around. Someone says, please let Dr. Austin know that the government has deregularized labor unions. They are unable to do anything. It is really very, very sad.
Wow.
Oh, wow. This is really sad. We'll keep the conversations going. We'll see you guys live tomorrow at 8 p.m. as we bring another great conversation to your screen. Enjoy.